Hello, my name is David Charles Rowan. I'm an astrologer, a teacher of astrology. Been doing this for more than 30 years. And every January, I conduct a forecast for the UK. My students attend these two-part classes, and sometimes non-students as well. Everyone's invited, but not everyone comes along. And we look at things like the monarchy, the government, the people, agriculture, NHS, the arts, different stratas of modern life. And this January, in part one, we look at the UK overall. In part two, we look at the political parties. We look at the main leaders of political parties, and we look at the royal family as well. Just because their birth times, the royal family's birth times, are known, so there's no guesswork with those. And the political things are interesting, but also they're all in a media goldfish bowl. So, because if you make a forecast about a famous person and you never know what their private life is like, you got no way of finding out if your predictions or the astrology was correct. Whereas with these things that are in the media glare all the time, we can kind of say, we think this is going to happen. Then we watch the news and see if it does. So this January, we formed the conclusion that the general election would be called in the late spring, early summer. And through the kind of the spring into April, it was kind of like, everyone's talking about November. Ministers were saying in the second half of the year, and things like this. And I was thinking, did we call it wrong? Obviously, we didn't, because the election was called before the end of May. And of course, it's taking place, now, really, or at least the run up to it is happening now. Campaign is happening now. But what was it in the astrology that made us look and think, it's definitely going to be in the spring? And I was showing some of my students who didn't attend this the other day, and they said, this is really cool. Got to show people this. And so I said, it's all right. Rather than kind of allow the class to be shown, because we talk about our own personal things in these classes, I'll do a standalone video just about this one little bit to kind of, just in case anyone's interested, really. So this is what we saw in Rishi Sunak's personal forecast. Right. So this display that you can see is called a time map. This is the time map of Rishi Sunak in 2024, beginning in April and extending out until the end of March. You see there's a calendar across the top. In the left-hand column, there's a listing of planetary data. And what's happened is that the computer, the Astro software, called Solar Fire, by the way, I highly recommend it, has looked at where the planets are positioned in real time on the 1st of April, and then compared those positions, to the positions of objects in Rishi Sunak's chart, which is constructed from the very moment he took his first breath from the place on Earth where he was situated at the time of his birth. And if it's found what it considers to be a significant angle, then it's made a listing of that angle of relationship in this left-hand column. And these symbols are symbols of planets, and the middle column here are the symbols of angular relationships. 0 degrees, 180 degrees, 120, 60 degrees, and 90. And so when one looks at this, you can see there's some interesting activity taking place towards the end of April. And then there's this. Now, this is the planet Uranus opposing his planet Uranus. And what's happened is that from when he was born, let's say, for example, this marks the position of where Uranus is at the time he takes his very first breath, right? And it takes 84 years to make a complete circuit around the sun. So it would take 84 years for Uranus to occupy the part of the sky that it was in when he took his very first breath. But halfway through that, Uranus is then opposing Uranus. And here it is. Uranus is opposing Uranus. It goes exact on the 22nd of May and is in the air or in play all the way through until the 28th of February. And this marks a sea change, a change of chapter, right? Rishi Sunak's previous chapter through his 30s was kind of dominated, or if you like, signified, it's a better word, by the planet Saturn. And in Rishi Sunak's chart, he has Saturn in Virgo in a part of the chart called the 11th house, which suggests that he takes responsibility for working with the collective, which is kind of what's been happening. His Uranus light phase, which begins now, as a complete change. When he was born, Uranus is in Scorpio in his first house, which suggests that he'll be revolving more around himself and he won't want to be in the limelight. He's going to kind of retreat. And this process begins here, the 22nd of May. In society, some people go through changes that are so observable at this time in their life that it's often given the cultural phrase, the midlife crisis. Okay, so people make changes. If someone's married, they get divorced. If someone's divorced or single, they get married. If someone drives a car, they suddenly get a motorbike. If they drive a motorbike or they cycle, they suddenly want to get a car. People make changes during this period of time, which can seem out of character at the time. So there's a potential here for Rishi Sunak to make radical changes which are a surprise to those around him, and even a surprise to himself. Because whenever there's a Uranus transit, a person can make changes that are radical departures from their usual course of activity or their usual type of decision making. And not only does Rishi Sunak have Uranus opposing Uranus for all this time here, he also has, building up in June, Uranus square his north node. And this suggests that for about a year, he's going to kind of make decisions which are a very radical departure from his normal way of being, such that when that period of time is finished, he might want to revert back to where he was. And I normally give people the advice, yes, dye your hair blue. Yes, shave your head, but do not get your name tattooed on your forehead, right? Keep away from the tattoo parlor. Leave the house, but don't burn it down. Meaning that the decisions that a person makes during this period of time might be just on the kind of the mood of the moment, as it were. And when the mood of the moment has reverted back to their normal kind of disposition, they can then find that they want to reverse the decisions and return to that position they were in before. But if they've burnt the bridges and scuppered the ship, they can't get back there. So I would have advised, if you're going to make radical decisions, make sure that they're reversible, right? Because otherwise you've got to live with what you've set in motion. I actually said in the January recording, I reckon during this period of time, he's going to do something which will upset the apple cart. Because whenever there's Uranus transit, change happens. But somehow it seems as if the person's unconscious conspires to stimulate changes in the world around them that actually appear to be coming from the outside world, but it's actually the person that's actually created it. So, for example, if a person had a job they didn't like, right? So they keep going to the factory they don't like, or they keep going to the shop or the office they don't like. And their inner being is saying, will you please stop them going to the factory? We can't stand it. And the person just keeps belligerently going to the factory. And their inner being would say, look, get him to stop going to the factory, and he won't. So when there's a Uranus transit in a certain part of the chart that deals with the daily working environment, what can happen is that the inner being has to employ something drastic to get the person to stop doing what the whole system doesn't like anymore. So, for example, if a person's got, a job they don't like, and Uranus is going through a part of their chart that's significant with this, They suddenly find one day that they oversleep. They wake up and it's midday. Oh my God, it's midday. So they phone the office. I'm so sorry. I've overslept. I don't know why. And they kind of rush to work and they get there at lunchtime and they walk in sheepishly and everyone thinks they've been out on the raz, kind of living it up. And they haven't. They went to bed at an ordinary time and they don't understand why they've overslept. But everyone suspects they've been kind of, it's a hangover or something, because why else would they oversleep? And why are they so coy and embarrassed about it? And about 3 weeks later, kind of quite randomly, it happens again. This time it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And they're, oh my God, and people are getting a bit tired now, kind of, yeah, all right, it's happened again, and they've got no explanation for it. They go to the doctors and to see if there's something, and the doctor can't really find a thing, but gives them some, medication. It doesn't happen for a while. Then suddenly, randomly, it happens again, and they end up getting called into the office. Their manager ends up giving them a verbal warning and then a written warning, and then it happens again, and they lose their job. And as soon as they've lost their job, it stops. And it's not anything other than their psyche employing some kind of change to get them out of the situation. So, although in a sense they were sacked from their job, it was them that initiated, or they were the catalyst for that change. Likewise, if it's moving through a part of a birth chart to do with, say, commitment relationships like a marriage, if a person's in a marriage and they've been thinking for a while, I really don't like this anymore, I really wish this would change, they can start unconsciously behaving in such a way that they annoy their partner to the extent that the partner then says, that's it, this is no good, this ain't working for me, I'm off. And it seems like it's the partner that's making the change when really it's them that's initiated it, but unconsciously, right? So I'm not saying that Reggie Sunak is deliberately scuppering the ship, not saying that he deliberately wanted to annoy everybody by leaving the D-Day commemorations early, but it was planned. And what were his advisors doing or saying? Endorsing this plan. But whatever the advisors said, it's still Richie Sunak's call, right? So from Sky TV to to leaving a commemoration early, yes, there does seem that there's a part of him that wants to kind of call it quits, really. And this began to build up about a month before it went exact. So it had been the end of April, it started to gather momentum. And this is in the air for him, certainly up until March. And the Uranus square the node will be in play until around June next year, because Uranus transits usually last for about a year. So Richie Sunak acting out of character, making changes at this period of time rather than later, not really a surprise. Okay, just wanted to share that with you, just so you can see a little bit of his astrology and maybe an astrological description or articulation of the timing of the election that's happening. All right, hope that was interesting, helpful, illuminating. Hope it's maybe stimulated some questions. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you have. All right, take care. Thank you. Bye.